Okay, the third book and my most hated read of 2019 is the nonfiction book Three Women by Lisa Taddeo. I have the physical library book in my hand, and I'm going to be referring to that, but I'll put the graphic of the book in the corner of the screen. This is going to be a little bit more of a serious analysis of the book. This was, again, this was a case of FOMO, fear of missing out. Because of the hype and because of the marketing that this book received, because of the topic, which sparked profound interest in me, I wanted to read it. And I acquired the book through Book of the Month Club. So I had a copy, a hard copy in my hands, and hadn't read it yet when I saw two videos on BookTube that profoundly affected how I felt going into the book. One of them was from Sarah at Hardcover Hearts, and the other was from Jaclyn at 6 Minutes for Me. And I'm going to link both videos in the description box below. Please go and watch them. They did such an acute and thorough analysis of the book and offered their very intelligent opinions, both of which I agree with 100%. And what Sarah did is she also offered some other books, some alternatives to Three Women that you should or could go and read, where you would get more of a story, more of expertise and analysis of the topic of women's sexual desire. This book was not it. Now, I'd like you to bear with me because I'm going to try to quickly read the dust jacket. And after I'm done with that, one of the reasons I was so angry at this book. Now, there's this leading section and then the blurb. Please bear with me. Desire as we've never seen it before. A riveting true story about the sex lives of three real American women based on nearly a decade of reporting. Now, I'm going to lead off by saying Lisa Taddeo, the author, is a journalist. She has an MFA from Boston University, and her professional credentials include writing entertainment pieces for magazines, interviewing celebrities. She's a sports writer. She's written short stories that she's won awards and grants for. So that's her background. She is not an expert or a doctor or an academic on the subject of female sexual desire. It took 10 years to write this book because she was embedded in the lives of the three women included in the book. And she moved across country several times. She actually talks about that in the intro and the prologue to the book. So she embeds herself in the lives of the three women of the title. She's taking extensive interviews, oral histories, looking at emails, looking at text messages. So that's how she's gathering all of the information into the sex lives of these three women. So I'm going to continue reading the blurb. It says, "It thrills us and torments us. It controls our thoughts, destroys our lives, and it's all we live for. Yet we almost never speak of it, and as a buried force in our lives, desire remains largely unexplored until now. Over the past 8 years, journalist Lisa Taddeo has driven across the country 6 times to embed herself with ordinary women from different regions and backgrounds. The result, Three Women, is the deepest nonfiction portrait of desire ever written and one of the most celebrated books of the year." Okay, in that one paragraph, I have issues. The first one is, "It thrills us and torments us. It controls our thoughts, destroys our lives, and it's all we live for." Untrue. It is not all, sexual desire is not all that women live for. It does not torment us. It does not control our lives. It does have that effect on some women. Absolutely. You cannot provide that universal statement in a dust jacket for the book because it's untrue. It's psychologically, emotionally, and mentally untrue. And it also says, the result, Three Women, is the deepest nonfiction portrait of desire ever written and one of the most celebrated books of the year. It is not the deepest portrait of desire ever written. Please look at Sarah's video, and I'm going to hopefully do a little bit of research and provide additional titles in the description of other books that would provide extensive detail, analysis, and expert testimony of the sexual desire of women. This one is not it. So, the next paragraph I don't have to read. It talks about the details of each of the women in the book. And then it says on the back part, based on years of immersive reporting and told with astonishing immediacy, Three Women is a groundbreaking portrait of erotic longing in today's America, exposing the fragility, complexity, and inequality of female desire. It is both a feat of journalism and a triumph of storytelling, brimming with nuance and empathy, that introduces us to three unforgettable women and one remarkable writer whose experiences remind us that we are not alone. It says it's a groundbreaking portrait of erotic longing in today's America, exposing the fragility, complexity, and inequality of female desire. Again, another universal statement about female desire, saying this book is that portrait. Inherent in the title of this book, Three Women, is the implication that this is a story about three women. Three women out of the entire country of the United States, which is what it concentrates on. This is not a universal book about female desire in all women. The three women in the book are three white women, two straight, one bisexual, all born as females. Most, I think all of them come from a privileged background, a privileged upbringing, who live generally middle to higher middle class lives, two of whom are Catholic. So these are very specific types of women, and the stories that are gathered by the author are stories not of sexual desire, but of sexual dysfunction and insecurity. They are depicting the specific women's experiences post-traumatic situations. That's one of the things that Taddeo does not expound on in an expert way, which should be considered, because what happens in a woman's childhood and early years, physically or emotionally or sexually, leads into how that woman lives her life, her sexual life in adulthood. The marketing of the book and the wording of the blurb is one of the most heinous examples of failure in marketing of any text that I've ever seen. There are books I read during the year that were based on how I felt about the summary of the book on the dust jacket or in the blurbs, and I was disappointed that the story, typically novels, did not follow through with that description and weren't what I was expecting. This one was actually a quite irresponsible example of media hype and a publisher's aggressiveness in describing what this book actually says. It felt to me that whoever wrote the description, whether it was a marketing department, the publisher, or an editor, didn't even read the book. Or it was the work of an editor that was told by the publisher, here's what you need to write, here's what appears on the blurb because I said so. It was not written by a person who actually understood the message of the book. Now, I'm going to read a little bit of the prologue. In the prologue, Taddeo describes her mother and the topic of her mother's sexual desire. That struck me as very odd because I don't know any of us, I don't know any friend or family member of mine who would want to explore the topic of our mother's sexual desire. There are some of us who have very close relationships with our parents, and some women whose mothers are their best friends. My mother is deceased, but when she was alive, she was one of my best friends. There were times when we talked about our sex lives. I was able to go to her and talk about some questions or some issues, and she did the same with me. We had that type of relationship. But quite honestly, there was a lot of subject matter I did not want to go any deeper into. And I have not talked to anybody that I know who would do the same thing with their mothers. So it's interesting to hear background family history, but not of my mother's sex life. So Taddeo offers an interesting take on conversations with and about her mother. Now, in the prologue, she says, let's see. she says she was not the type of woman, she's talking about a man who used to follow her mother as she walked to work every day. And she says, she was not the type of woman to take pleasure in this, but I can't know for sure. My mother never spoke about what she wanted, about what turned her on or off. Sometimes it seemed that she didn't have any desires of her own, that her sexuality was merely a trail in the woods, the unmarked kind that is made by boots trampling tall grass, and the boots belonged to my father. It's very stereotypical about mothers that don't talk about what they wanted. In general, mothers are often selfless, and you work for the benefit of your children and your family, and you quite often go without for the benefit of giving your children what they need and want. That's very stereotypical of a mother in general. As far as sexual desire, why would a mother talk about what she wanted sexually with her daughter? Why would her daughter be aware of that in childhood or young adulthood in her mother's sex life? I did not really know where she was going with that. The next page in the prologue, she writes, of course, female desire can be just as bullish as male desire, and when desire was propulsive, when it was looking for an end it could control, my interest waned. But the stories wherein desire was something that could not be controlled, when the object of desire dictated the narrative, that was where I found the most magnificence, the most pain. It resembled pedaling a bicycle backward, the agony and futility, and finally the entry into another world altogether. To me, this sounds like a gratuitous push to display women's pain and sexual dysfunction and sexual insecurity, when she says, something that could not be controlled, when the object of desire dictated the narrative, that was where I found the most magnificence. It sounds traumatic to me for her to display these women's sexual insecurities and sexual traumas in that way. For her to find magnificence in that sounds so gratuitous to me. I don't know. And she says the object of desire dictated the narrative. The object of desire clearly being the women in this book. She says that it's written in a narrative style. Taddeo does not write any of her own opinion, or she tries not to. She's simply displaying the statements of the women and what the women said almost verbatim. So she's not analyzing anything that happened in these women's lives and comparing it to the sexual situations that each of the women entered into. So very quickly, the three women, Maggie is a young woman whose story we first hear as a teenager, and she is groomed and pulled into a sexual relationship with a favored teacher who ends up winning a Teacher of the Year award. Now, it's clearly sexual abuse of a minor. It's clearly a teacher in a position of authority who takes advantage of a girl who expresses a crush on him or something of that sort, a young girl troubled or insecure who looks up to her teacher, and he very clearly abuses her. The other story is of Lena, who is, she's raped as a young woman. She ends up being married to a man who has no physical desire for her. He doesn't touch her, he doesn't kiss her, and she has 2 children. She is desperate to either improve her sexual situation and relationship with her husband or leave the marriage. She ends up entering into a sexual affair with a man who was her boyfriend or lover or crush in high school, and they are both married. Sloane is a woman who is married to Richard, and they desperately love each other, but she seems to be at first a straight white woman in a loving marriage. She ends up acting out sexually with men and women of her husband's choosing, and she ends up in those situations. It starts off that she and her husband agree to a sexual threesome with another woman. When she sees her husband doing things with the other woman, she becomes angry, hurt, scared, and forces her husband to stop the situation. However, going forward, he chooses sexual partners for her so he can watch the sexual events happening. She ends up having an affair with a male co-worker who tells her that he has a troubled marriage, and ends up being approached by the wife, coming to realize that he probably lied to Sloane, and she is now trying to avoid his wife. So it's a very messed up situation. When a book is billed as a book addressing the topic of female desire in a universal way, the particular specific stories of only 3 women is an irresponsible display of the entire universal topic of female sexual desire. So I wanted to read and learn. That's not the point of this book. The point of this book is titillation and money-making efforts, most likely from the publisher who wrote the description and the summary of the book on the blurb. It's also about, I think I'm going to say, in my opinion, it's the author making a name for herself, because this book was so expected and grossly, wildly hyped before it even came out. So the anticipation surrounding this book was enormous. And I myself kind of got caught up in that. By the time I finished reading the book, I felt that it was irresponsible at best and dangerous at worst, because of the expectation it raised for women, because of the statements made, where I've seen videos from younger women who have loved the book, and I've listened to their opinions as to why they love the book. And some of the opinions spoke of it as if this defined women's desire in general as a universal statement. That is dangerous if that's the message that the book is giving out to younger women. And that's something that I would state other books are better able to say and to get across to women who want to learn about sexual desire of their own, of women in general, of different types of women. This book only looks at 3 white women who are, like I said earlier, come from privileged backgrounds, 2 of whom are married and who have wildly different marriages. A book about female sexual desire must address the experiences of a lot of different types of women, of different sizes, ages, colors, sexual orientations, genders. It needs to address things and define things based on the narratives of these women who, in their experiences, are very clearly objects of desire, and not the agents and the powerful ones in their own situations. That's the dangerous part of the book. As the subject of female sexual desire needs to address the power that women have over defining what it is they actually want, and defining what they need, and the ability to ask for what they want and need. It is the obligation of any writer who wants to bring this subject up in a universal way to address the psychology of desire, the mental and physical lives of these women, and how they express their sexual desire. It is not the opportunity of the writer, of the author, to take specific stories from 3 very different individuals and use them as examples, to place them up on a pedestal of examples of universal female desire. It was stated in the book that Taddeo posted invitations for stories about sexual desire and sex lives. And at first she got, and was actually hoping for stories from men. She wanted to write about men's desires, and she herself stated that she quickly realized that most male sexual desire is similar. They only want one thing. And she got bored. And so she ended up collecting information from women and found that topic much more interesting. So she started to pursue a larger group of women and interviewed them to find out about their sexual desire and sex lives. Many of the women were unwilling to provide enough information for her to put in the book. So the 3 women included are the ones who she describes in the book as the most relatable, but in interviews, she has stated that they were the ones with the most material to compile into a book. When I read nonfiction, no matter whether it's narrative nonfiction, oral history, or expository nonfiction, or research writing, there needs to be backup. There needs to be notes. There needs to be resources that the reader goes back to see the work that the author went into in compiling the narrative or the information that she's giving or he's giving to the reader. I want to see references. I want to see what the author referred back to in order to write the material in the book. I want dates. I want to know when she gathered the information, from what source, and preferably what I would have wanted to see in a book that was billed in this way. Even though it's the story of 3 women, I would have wanted to see very succinctly researched material around sexual desire in women and how the experiences of these 3 women fit into that information. In my opinion, that should only be done by a doctor, whether it's a gynecologist or an obstetrician, or a psychologist or psychiatrist with expertise in female sexual desire or female sexuality or human sexuality in general. This particular author is not qualified to write a book on sexual desire in women who she claims is a universal experience that all women feel. It is not. Highly disappointed, actually infuriated with this book. And I know that there's an enormous amount of interest. I know that women who still haven't read it really want to read it. And I'm going to parrot what Sarah said in her video. Don't buy the book. Get it out of the library if you're still curious. Check it out. Read it. If you absolutely love it and want to buy yourself a copy, by all means, you are free to do that. But if you haven't read it yet and choose to, do not purchase it. Check it out from the library. Again, I'm going to do a little bit of research and come up with some other books that I can put in the description box below that may be better sources for you to refer back to if you want to read and learn about female sexual desire in order to either understand yourself better or to understand the lives of women better. And, you know, sexual desire leads not into just your sex life, but into a lot of other parts of your life as well. Your romantic relationships, your love life, your romantic life. So there's a lot of nuances to it that is not explained in the book. Phew. So that is purely my opinion on the worst nonfiction read of my year last year. Okay. Hopefully I won't have a video that I want to post like this again, but we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen in 2020. So typically my nonfiction reading takes up about 10% of my year. It took up a little more than 10% last year. One of my very loose goals for myself this year is to read more nonfiction of all different sorts, whether it's research, academic, narrative, oral history, I don't know, humor, any of it. I'm going to try to pick up more because I have so much already that I'm really interested in. And that's one of my very loose reading goals for 2020. Phew. Okay. We're gonna end with a smile and with an upbeat attitude because I'm very positive and optimistic going forward that 2020 is going to be another great reading year. Thank you very much for watching. Put your comments down below. I would love to have more discussion about this book. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.